welcome to the NewsX-Sunday Guardian Roundtable. Well, this is election year, and as any political watcher will tell you, this is a time for freebies and populist promises. There is also a vote on account that is due in 2 weeks' time. We're expected to hear a lot of these promises being made and announced. But can the government deliver on these? Because do remember, there is life beyond 3 months. And also, more importantly, what has been the track record of Modi government on its past promises? Has it delivered on all that is promised? To discuss that, joining me on the roundtable is Lavish Bhandari. He's an economist and director at the Indicus Foundation. Sandeep Bamza, Aditi Fadnis, she's a political editor at Business Standard. And Pranjal Sharma, he's a columnist and also the author of Kranti Nation. Lavish, let's first look at the past before we look at the future. Has the government, do you think, delivered on all that it has promised? Has the optics been good, or does it have to do a lot of band-aids before going in for elections?
Well, you can just look at this in 2 ways. First is the optics part of it, which I'd like to talk about a bit later. But one of the most important parts of any government, at least on the economic management, is to keep the fisc under some sort of a check. Barring last year, I think generally it has been fairly decent, and they have been fairly disciplined in their expenditures. And of course, we know that in the last year there have been many, the GST and of course the impact of the demonetization and the impact on government revenues has really set this off this thing. So I think on the one major thing that this government promised was fiscal discipline. Broadly, yes, it has. On infrastructure, I would be less barring perhaps on the roads and side. I think there has been very serious issues with on the power sector. Though investment has been happening, but then we haven't really corrected the underlying problems that we have there. I think on the social sector side as well, we have had a few programs, and there has been some tightening, some improvement. But overall, on the institutional level, strengthening of the government as an institution has where I think this government hasn't really done very well. And so on that part, the optics part of it, I think broadly it has really failed the test. And that's perhaps one of the reasons why we are seeing this whole thing about freebies at this point in time.
So when all else fails, Sandeep, you promise farm loan waivers or some basic income or whatever. So is this really band-aid what the government is trying to do?
Well, it seems like a desperate measure because you're mandated by law under the FRBM Act to stick to the fisc. And while they managed to do that, as Lavish said, this year I think everything will go haywire if they continue to appease the electorate through populist policies. Now, there are two issues at hand. One, they're talking about a direct benefit transfer to the farmers. And the other thing that they're trying, which again is a manifestation and a redux of what the UPA planned, which is a universal basic income. Now, let's look at the 5 years or so in totality. So, it begins with an obsession with legislation, and black money. It begins with gradualism and incrementalism across the board. You fail on the legislative part, you fail on the obsession with black money. The gradualism and incrementalism continues. And then suddenly you have this jibe of Soot Boot Ki Sarkar, which awakens you from the arms of mafias, and you take a deep left turn.
Right. Or left.
Suddenly, from a right-wing political formation, you become a practitioner of left-type welfare economics. Then there is a passage of time where nothing seems to be happening, barring two major events, both disastrous. One, demonetization, which led to mass demand destruction, just when the economy, which had been careening completely out of control, because of 2 successive droughts, was beginning to recover. Tractor sales were good, auto sales were good, and as we know, as we've learned in economics, economic activity moves on wheels. Things had begun to improve, and then suddenly you had this body blow. MSME sector was debilitated. Industrial labor, farm labor, you name it. I mean, we still haven't recovered from those body blows. And then came GST almost back to back. And now virtually everybody in government has also accepted that the alacrity shown and the way it was handled was completely wrong. So I would personally think that it's 5 years, plus 5 years of UPA 2. We've seen a decadal story of inactivity inertia, lassitude. And I'm completely dismayed with the performance on the economic front, because if you were to compare these 5 years with the 6 years of Atalji, who incidentally ran a minority government, 13 days, 13 months, and the rest, every time a minority government, the kind of structural reforms that took place during that period and what has happened now, it's actually, it's completely disappointing, and I still can't come to terms with the fact that a right-wing political formation with a mandate of 284 plus allies 334
has done so little.
Has done so little in terms of, and I think more than anything else, I find them to be status quoists, which is probably the most disappointing thing about them.
Would you agree to all this? Pretty harsh indictment, but...
Well, no, I'm afraid not, because I think that a lot of things which have been, small things which have been tweaked, actually in the small things that have been changed, this government has done more than previous governments that I can recall for the last...
For example?
For example, winding up shell companies. For example, winding up, for example, the Ujjwala scheme. For example, subsidized and affordable housing. For example, issues relating to management of the power sector debt, which has resulted in many states, if the state governments are enlightened, in many states, including Telangana, it has resulted in an unprecedented burst of power-fueled growth. And actually, Telangana, I mean, I remember the days when Chandrababu Naidu was Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, undivided Andhra Pradesh. And he tried to implement power sector reforms in that state. And in year 2000, 39 people died from police firing because they were protesting against the power tariff revision. So things like that have happened almost without our knowing it. It has happened in a very unobtrusive way.
I thought the other way around, that too much has been advertised and too little has happened.
Well, I'm not entirely sure about that. If you look at, for instance, the scheme for gas, the Give It Up scheme.
Yes.
If you add together, aggregate all the savings of the power company, of the gas companies, it amounts to, on last count, it was around 14,000 crore. This is the result of the Prime Minister telling people, you don't need a gas cylinder, give it up. You don't need it.
But this is the gradualism and incrementalism that I'm talking about. It results in administrative reform. It makes what they believe is life easier for the person living at the bottom of the pyramid. But what about big ticket reform?
Which has not happened. Pranjal, your takeaway on the optics of the last 4 years?
I think big ticket reforms, I would say, despite, I'm not disagreeing with the earlier speakers, but I do think that the fundamental changes have been attempted. I think GST happened on the back of demonetization, therefore it added to problems rather than being a solution. But I do think that GST has, in all its rickety form, is a fundamental shift in the way taxation is done in the country. It's not perfect, but it will take a while to evolve to achieve a sense where you can feel more confident about it. I think the focus on resolving the banking sector issues, the issues that were leading to the public sector banks being seen as absolutely, milk cows for everybody to make the most out of. I think that effort to contain that is very laudable. There has been a strong impact of that. Combine that with the effort of the bankruptcy law. For the first time, I think, in the history of India, an owner of a company and a large conglomerate has the fear of his or her company being taken away from them because of mismanagement. Now, again, it's early days, but I do think that some of these fundamental reforms will have an impact for the country if they're allowed to deepen, if the roots are allowed to go, and for the, the fruits to start emerging. These two shifts have happened only in the last couple of years. So for us to say that have they reached their zenith in terms of giving the impact for the economy? Not yet. But I think we have to allow them some more time for the fruits to emerge.
That is what Modi is arguing. He wants 5 more years. But, they are saying some structural reforms have taken place. But is it enough? Because especially with this government, as he was saying, you expected them to do more.
So absolutely, it's not enough. Well, the couple of things that they tried, they were not able to implement very well. even by their own this thing. So whether it was demonetization or GST, both have been massive ones. So even if you support the whole concept of demonetization, the fact is that it was implemented horribly. GST is another bad implementation, and going back so many times, take 3 steps forward and 5 steps backwards, and then it's back and forth like that. So I think this government has been fairly weak on many of the big ticket changes that it intended to do. And yes, on the gradual issues, it has done well. I also believe that on the that if you look at the overall performance, this whole thing of too much centralization that seems to be happening, and really, I mean, we're really not getting too much from the government. So we are guessing that how is this government functioning internally? But it does seem that this is a highly centralized government. And institutions around it do appear to be falling in line with a centralized setup. Now, this is all, we don't know, but this is what's happening. That's not right, and we all know that in the long term, India will have to be run in a decentralized manner.
Right. And this, sorry, you want to go?
No, when we talk about gradualism and incrementalism, it's not that nothing has happened. For instance, one of the offshoots of demonetization was financialization of savings. So a lot of money that was parked in bullion, in real estate, and in other stuff which was not latently declared, now has begun to find its way into mutual funds. And that's how mutual funds have emerged as a counterweight to foreign portfolio investors. And if the Indian equity markets have remained more or less stable, despite FPIs pulling out 83,000 crores, which is the largest amount in recent memory. Formalization of the economy has also taken place, where the black and the white have converged to some extent, not completely. Cash is still king. You mentioned the word optics. Optics in a different sense is very important for this government, because the optics of maintaining that we are doing stuff is what it's all about. So,
Sandeep,
what do you do?
I agree with you, but also I think this government realizes that all the steps that you've identified did not yield political benefit to Atal Bihari Vajpayee government. They lost.
See, please understand, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, Chandrababu Naidu and S.M. Krishna all lost at the same time. And we continue to claim that it was India Shining which did them in, Cyberabad which did them in, IT in Bangalore did them in. The reality is that if you go back in time and you look at what happened in 2003, 2004, it was the worst drought in living memory, which actually pulled everything, from beneath their feet. Pricing erosion is the single biggest thing despite a food glut in this country.
And yet there is no slowdown in tractor growth, tractor sales growth. There is no
tractor sales. Automobile sales have fallen off the cliff.
HUL is Hindustan
Nestle
Lever,
is also showing,
Nestle,
Britannia is also
everybody.
showing. All the consumption companies are doing well.
Who's consuming all this stuff? Where is it all going?
Well, we're going to take a break and come back, and it's pretty ironical that the Prime Minister, who's known for his Gujarat model, is now actually looking for someone, say, like the TRS Chief Minister for his next model. Is a model of populism, freebies, or actually are things being done on the ground? So stay with us. Hello and welcome back to the Roundtable on the economy. Aditya, to take off from what Sandeep said before the break, he mentioned chief ministers or prime ministers who are known for their development work and they lost. There is a feeling among this government also that development doesn't win elections, so let's go now take the path of doles and freebies, or giving basic incomes to farmers, loan waivers, etc.
Well, I mean, every government has to do both. They have to do development work,
and they have.
My problem is that some sectors the government has moved very fast. In some sectors it hasn't moved at all. So the synergy that exists between various parts of the government, various parts of the economy, it's not a uniform pace of development. You had developments taking place at supersonic speed in the coal sector. You removed one way of auctioning coal and you replaced it with another. But then in the power sector, you had a problem because suddenly all this coal piled up and there was no demand. People didn't want that kind of coal. They wanted a different kind of coal. And that coal you were not ready to provide. So, I mean, things are not keeping pace internally within the government.
So this shows lack of policy.
It shows lack of experience. It shows somebody who does not have a full view of the entire system as it exists and is just making it up as you go along. According to me, that is the biggest sin in governance. You cannot make it up as you go along.
Do you also get the same feeling? And also, finally, you compare Modi to, say, Vajpayee government or, earlier governments. How has he fared?
I think the whole piece of that spectacular, grand, big-ticket reform is very attractive. And I do agree that Vajpayee did it much better than Modi did.
So did Lakshmana Rao,
but remember the fact that in the first year of Modi government, the biggest push he made was for land reforms, the Land Acquisition Act. He expanded. That was supposed to be the big attractive
move. But he obsessed with legislation, and then he realized that it has to be given to the states and they have to manage it.
But Sandeep, that's the whole point. The point is that he did begin with having a couple of these big grand ideas and vision to implement. He ran against, he ran into a wall, didn't know what to do with it.
So then is Aditi right? They're making it up as they go along.
No, I think the problem this government has faced is they're trying to figure out what to do with an absolutely destroyed economy. One of the reasons why when we were talking about consumer demand not being there, it's partly because, jobs were lost in the previous 5 years. Industry lost most of its capacity. They stopped investing in new capacity addition. The point is that consumer demand is still not picking up. Job creation is still not picking up. And I think what Aditi said is that there's lack of understanding and experience on how to turn around an economy of this size. There's no one person who has that vision, and they've been experimenting. I mean, if you look at what's happened at Niti Aayog is also farcical. They've kept changing the people. It was supposed to be a think tank for the government. The idea and the concept was great, but in the end, it has not helped anybody. So I think that lack of understanding of what makes the economy tick and how to turn around such a huge ship, I think that is showing today.
So then, Lavish,
what happens is, no political leadership is expected to know everything. You don't, and you don't need to.
It's the bureaucracy
it's the bureaucracy, the technocracy, the expertise that's around. And that's the problem of this leadership. If the leadership is not able to get good people around itself, or to trust good people, or the people that you trust are not decently capable or capable.
You trust them for the wrong reasons.
Let me finish. Yeah. So if that is your problem, then these are natural outcomes. Any political leadership will have to get together expertise, whether it is on the coal side, whether it is on food imports, and we continue to import food till about a few months back. So now what is this happening? Here you have not collected the leadership, you have not built up institutions, and you've had 4 years of pretty decent growth, and who says the demand has been lacking? Demand has been very, very, very good, I mean, by most standards. So the point is that there have been good times that there have been some things of single government-driven interventions that this government is very good at, centralized interventions.
Very good at that.
Very good at that. That is why Ujjwala works. But as soon as you need to bring people together, as soon as you need to do a cross, you need some sort of give and take, everything collapses.
There's another theory being floated that good chief minister don't make good prime ministers.
I do not think that Mr. Modi does not have experience. I think he's very experienced. The close team that he has built is experienced. That's not the issue. But you need expertise, which is different from experience. And expertise is about getting technocrats. It's not just about bureaucrats.
But even the technocrats who were hired, they also ran away.
That's because that spirit is not there.
Yeah, Arvind Panagriya ran away, Arvind Subramaniam ran away, Raghuram Rajan ran away. They all ran away.
So did this government have the wrong priorities, Anarati? We spoke about the land acquisition bill being his first big ticket. When you come in, you've got the mandate, that's when the goodwill is really high. That's when you take the harsher steps.
To be honest, I'm not sure if the government, when it came to power, it was thinking of any harsh steps. I think at that time, the thing was that we want to make India a modern, forward-looking economy. We want to leverage small cities, make them grow into big cities. In order to do that, we have to build roads, airports, improve the railways, turn railways into freight, move passengers from railways to the civil aviation, give a possibility of a civil aviation sector a new thrust, etc., etc. So the project was a new urbanized India. Right. And I remember very clearly in the first couple of days of Mr. Modi taking over, a speech which he made, I think either in Maharashtra or somewhere, where he told farmers that for God's sake, how long will you continue tilling this parched land? at the mercy of the elements, not waiting, not relying on rain all the time, not knowing whether your seed is going to work or not. You take my advice, give your land over for urban facilities in your area. Send one person of your family. I'm not saying give up farming, but send one person of your family to the city so that at least in hard times there is some source of income.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, all those that was to me the kernel of Modi's thinking when he embarked on this ridiculous land acquisition change. Yeah, but. And that seems to be the problem, that there are just not enough people in his government to take the ball and run with it.
And that's
the ideation is there. It's not that the ideation is lacking. Skill development, vital. In a nation where there is mass migration taking place to urban agglomerates, you need skill development. But execution, peril.
So there's that
manufacturing. Perfect idea. You have to enlarge the scope and size of manufacturing in a country like India, and it will give you employment opportunities. Again, execution peril.
So is
and
that
I can carry on and on and on.
I mean, take the last speech he made at the Economic Advisory Council meeting, which was the only last public meeting to have taken place, where all these captains of industry attended. He told them, look, I get a salary, so I go home, I take a salary, I do my work and I go home. But you guys, you work on the basis of taking risks. The more your risk, the greater the money you earn. So take risks. Go out and do.
But where is the atmosphere for the risk?
Essentially, we go back to the same thing.
Value.
Wherever you can order one public sector or government entity, you go ahead and do it.
Yeah. It is done.
He does it. As soon as you need to bring people together, ensure that the process back and forth happens, he fails. On complex interventions, this government is not succeeding, and it will continue not to succeed if it does not change its model.
Pranjal, last word.
Well, I think hopefully the government should have learned from its mistakes. I think they have not been able to take all the right decisions, but I do think that on the governance piece, the administrative piece, which is very important. It's tinkering with the plumbing, which is leaking all the time. They've tried to fix that. And I hope that is going to make a difference to the people at the end who feel that they have received things like gas connections, light connections, and perhaps improved law and order. That could perhaps be the key benefit for
us. Is going to start a whole new debate, so I'm not going to...
I just want to add one quick thing. Okay. We are still awaiting that transformative idea. Administrative reform, deepening, has been done, no question about that. At the bottom of the pyramid, people, their lives have probably got better. I can't vouch for it, but their lives have probably got better because of this administrative
reform. I think Lavish may disagree, but I think we are totally out of time on that one. So that's it for now. I'm going to leave it to you to decide whether this government has made a difference, small difference, big difference. Well, we'll soon know in a few months' time. But that's it for now. Thank you for watching this show. We'll see you again same time next week.